Okay, so this is video for my students in Calculus 1 that will take Calculus 1 this semester, and there is a lab component when they have to go over several projects in Maple. So the purpose of this video is actually to pinpoint just a couple of things that keep on repeating themselves for those who use this software for the first time. So I'm trying essentially to avoid some of the repeated questions people, instructors get when trying to help students who learn to use Maple for the first time. So the labs will be self-explanatory. I mean, each lab will contain instructions on how to proceed. But in this small presentation, short presentation, I want to just go over a couple of things to keep in mind. Very, very basic, because for the most part, you have to basically discover yourself how to work with Maple. I mean, like any software, you learn by doing stuff rather than just asking questions anytime you stumble onto something difficult. So one of the most important things to keep in mind when you actually go over a Maple project is that the Maple software, I mean, in the worksheet, Maple doesn't care about the order of writing the commands in the worksheet. Rather, the order of executing these commands is important. So Maple will always remember the order these commands are executed. Where they happen to be placed in the worksheet is irrelevant. So let me illustrate with a simple example. Notice, first of all, there are two modes, the text mode and the math mode. Text mode is basically you can write anything you want. It's not interpreted mathematically. Math mode, obviously, anything you write, Maple will try to execute that entry in the block mathematically, depending on the situation. So for example, I'm going to assign a variable a value to a variable x. Notice I didn't click enter yet, so this is not executed yet. I just move further down and assign another variable to another variable, another value, let's say 3. Again, I didn't click enter on the highlighted part. Y equals 3 takes the value 3. So at this point, Maple doesn't know what x and y are. The values are not assigned since I didn't execute these commands yet. So now if I enter further down the road x plus y and now click enter, I think I clicked enter before. So let me retrace my steps a little bit. I'll talk about the restart in a minute. But anyway, so if you just enter x takes the value 2, y takes the value 3, didn't actually hit enter on either of these, and then enter x plus y, Maple will simply enter x, give back as a result x plus y, because neither of these two commands previously were executed. So for example, if I hit enter on x takes the value 2, now if I go back and hit enter on x plus y, obviously Maple now knows it's 2 plus y. Y is not known yet because I didn't hit enter on this command yet. I do it now. Finally, both x and y have the value assigned to them, and then obviously Maple will compute the value x plus y equals 5. Restart, which I just entered here, clears all the worksheet from all the assigned variables. So that's basically starting from scratch. Again, it doesn't matter where you place this command, it matters when you execute it. So for example, I can write restart here. Now all the variables are cleared. If I go back to x plus y, neither of these values is known, so therefore you have x plus y shown. Let's say I change the order of the assigning these values. Let's say I start with y takes the value 3. If I go back to x plus y, now it's going to be obviously x plus 3, because x again is not known. Finally, I move on the top here and assign the value 2 to x, and now x plus y obviously is computed to 5. So again, the take-home message here is that what you have to keep in mind is that the order of executing the commands is what matters. Of course, to be organized in the worksheet, you want to execute the commands in the order they are written in the worksheet. But it's important to remember that Maple doesn't care about that order the position in the worksheet. It only cares about what's executed last, so to speak. So For example, the command restart, I usually place it in the beginning of the worksheet, because if I want to start from scratch, I'm going to start with this command, which, as I said, clears all the variables. Speaking about clearing the variables values, let's say I have two variables, x equals 2, y equals 4. Now, later on, I'm happy with x having the value 2, but I want to clear the value from y, and I don't want to restart the whole worksheet. So I don't want to basically start from scratch the entire worksheet. You can clear a single or specific variables by using the command unassign. So unassign, and in parentheses, put a list of variables under apostrophes, marks, and when you click enter, it seems like it's nothing happens, but in fact y now is cleared, it's no longer 4. So it's basically ready to use for any other purpose as a variable. And x of course is still 2, right? That's what I executed last time. You can clear more than one variable. I mean, you can add, separated by commas, another variable here under the apostrophes. So now both y and x are cleared, and they are ready to use from scratch. Another important thing to keep in mind, you will use function definition quite often, and the template for a function definition is right here on the left side. This seems a bit confusing sometimes, the name a and y. So a is for the variable of the function, and y is for the actual value of the function, for the rule, so to speak. So for example, if in text mode, as you will see it in a textbook, your function should be, let's say, f of x equals x plus 3. Notice nothing happens here because this is in text mode. Then the correct way to define the function is x for a and x plus 3 for y. And from this point on, again, you can use the function by calling various values. So for example, I know that f of 2 should be 5. I know that f of 4 should be 7, f of 7 should be 10, and so on. Let's see what happens if when I do, let's restart, and let's say I don't replace this a with x, but I put just x plus 3 here. Well, now when you try to execute call the function for various values, notice that it doesn't compute what you wanted to compute. X doesn't change because you didn't place x instead of a for the variable of the function. To make matters worse, let's say previously x was a variable that had a value, let's say 2, and you define this function. From the point of view of Maple, the function now is a constant function. Notice it's 5 because the variable of the function is a, x has a prior value 2, so it's like defining the constant function 5, which confuses the students quite a lot because let's say you want to plot the function, you expect a line, an inclined, slanted line, but when you plot it, of course, it appears as a horizontal line. Let's see if I can do this quickly. Horizontal line because obviously the function is a constant from the point of view of Maple. So going back to this, a should be x, and now of course if you repeat the plotting it, so when you highlight, by the way, a math object, the contextual menu is on the right hand side here for the plots. And 1 second, I made a mess here of myself. For some reason the delete doesn't work well. So f x plus 3, no, let's restart. So I can clear the variable x. There you go. And now when you plot the function, it should be the slanted line that you would expect. And finally, one last thing I want to mention here is the Euler constant E. So if you use E from the keyboard, that's not going to be the Euler constant. E is just another variable. There is a special symbol for the Euler constant which appears in not in italic format, but like this in the common symbol. So that's a very common mistake, because entering E from the keyboard is interpreted as any other variable, and again it's confusing because if you try to plot this, notice that the only options are implicit plots, because both E and X are variables. So Maple thinks you try to plot a function of two variables rather than one. So you choose one of these, nothing happens, or it appears an empty graph because there are no ranges specified for E or X. On the other hand, of course, if you use the common symbol E for X, E for the Euler constant, and you highlight it, now you should have the option 2D plot, and you should see the exponential function that you would expect. So these are just a couple of basic things to keep in mind. If something else comes to mind, I may add another video later on. And that's it for now.